Hello, my name is Miss Mushchin and I am the subject lead for Sociology here at Bay House. In this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about what Sociology is, do an overview of the course that you'd study here at Bay House and go into some frequently asked questions. So first of all, Sociology as a subject is the academic study of society, and we look at how and why certain groups in society, for example, have slightly different maybe life chances, why some of them might have more opportunities than others. A lot of our students haven't studied sociology before, which is absolutely fine because a lot of schools don't do GCSE sociology, whereas we do have a handful of students who have maybe studied sociology at GCSE. So the A-level's been designed to ensure that students who haven't studied it before aren't at a disadvantage, but also making sure that we build on the knowledge of students who have studied the GCSE sociology before. So that is slightly different in terms of content, but it is also more challenging because it is at an A-level level as opposed to GCSE. For A-level sociology, you'll study a range of topics. So in your first year, you study culture, families, education, and research methods. And in your second year, you study social stratification or inequality and crime and deviance. So I will go through these in a little bit more detail later on. We look at a range of different issues and debates within each topic. So for example, we look at whether or not crime can be good for society, or whether the education system is fair. And with each debate, we look at the different sociological perspectives. So sociologists will look at the same issues, but they might have a different view of it. So for example, if we were to look at whether or not the education system was fair, certain groups of sociologists would say there's certain groups of people that it's not fair for, and maybe advantages other groups of people. In your lessons, you don't obviously just develop subject knowledge, you also develop a range of other academic skills. So for example, essay writing, so writing good essays and writing strong essays, and also learning those skills like analysis and evaluation, comparing different arguments, and so on and so forth. If we have a look at our examination results over the last few years, so last year we had 81.3% of our students achieved an A star to B grade, and all of our students achieved A star to C. In previous years, we do have a high A star to C rate. So in 2018 to 2019, 82.1% of our students got A star to C, 100% of our students got an A star to D, and the year before, 100% of our students also achieved A star to C. If we have a look at the course overview, so these are going into a little bit more detail about the topics that you would study in your first year A-level and your second year A-level. So I'm going to talk you through families and households and research methods, and Miss Osborne, who's also a sociology teacher at Bay House, she's going to talk through culture and education. So in the families and households topic, we start off by looking at how we'd actually define a family. So in social research, which we look at in methods, we need to be more specific with our definitions. So we look at how definitions of the family have changed over time. We look at different family types. So we used to have one type of family, so our traditional nuclear family. We used to have the vast majority of families would be that kind of family, whereas now we have more family diversity. So we have more types of family that are more common compared to what they were in the 1950s and 60s. So for example, lone parent families are more common compared to the number that we would have had in the 1950s and 60s. And we look at reasons as to why that is. We also look at demographics, so people are having less children in their lifetime, and so family sizes are getting smaller, and we look at reasons as to why that is. In research methods, we look at different methods to collect data. So when we're creating more social policies or creating new social policies here in the UK, that policy needs to be supported with social research, and most of the time it will be a sociologist or someone with a social science background who will do that research to inform that policy making. So in research methods, we look at questionnaires, unstructured interviews, and what the various strengths and weaknesses are of those methods. We also look at approaches to research methods. So some groups of sociologists would say that we need to study society more scientifically, so using more like kind of numbered data to be able to spot patterns and trends, whereas other sociologists would say, well, actually we need to take more of an in-depth approach to have an understanding of why people behave in certain ways and why some people have opportunities more than others. I'm going to pass over to Miss Osborne, who is going to talk you through culture and education, which are the two other topics that you study in your first year.
Hello all. So first we look at culture, which is looking at different cultures around the globe and how that might affect human behaviour. So things like what you eat, how you eat, the language you use, your attitude towards marriage, that type of thing, and how that can shape the person that you are. We also look at things like what happens when you are not socialised. So feral children is something we look at, which is when children are brought up by animals. It's quite rare, but it does happen. Then we move on, we look at education. So in that section, we look at things like, does your gender, ethnicity and social class have an impact on how well you do in school? Should we have private schools? Should we have setting and streaming in schools, or does that have a negative impact if you think, oh, I'm in the bottom set, like I'm not going to achieve? We look at whether the exam systems are fair, whether coursework should be reintroduced. We look at the impact that teachers can have on pupil performance. We look at things like student loans and university fees and whether that is a fair system. We also consider things like functionalist, new right, Marxist, feminist and postmodern views of education. So that's looking at all the different perspectives and their view on whether education is a good thing and functional for society because it prepares us for the workplace, or whether maybe it's negative and that it's controlling our behaviour.
In your second year, you study crime and deviance and social stratification. So I'm going to talk through a little bit about the crime and deviance topic. And Miss Osborne again will talk to you about the social stratification topic. So in crime and deviance, we look at, again, the different approaches to crime. So we look at what feminists would say about crime. We look at patterns of crime. So why certain groups of people might appear to commit more crime than others. Is it that they do commit more crime, or is it that maybe they're treated unfairly by the criminal justice system? We look at more contemporary issues. So we look at green crime, for example, which is relatively new. We look at the impact of globalization, so how crime has maybe become a global issue. So things like drug trafficking and human trafficking we look at. And then we also look at social policy, so what crime policies we have had introduced over the last few years and how successful they have been. I'm going to pass over to Miss Osborne, who is going to go over the social stratification topic with you now.
In the second year, you start by looking at social stratification, which basically means inequality. Stratification means layers or divisions within society and how that impacts on your life chances. So basically, do men have better life chances than women? Do working class people feel disadvantaged? Are they disadvantaged by the position they're born into? We look at things like, should we have 0-hour contracts? Do women now have equality with men? Or do women have more power than men now? Is society racist? What is the best way to prevent racism? We look at debates surrounding whether class is actually dead and are less important than it used to be, and whether age inequality matters, whether your age does matter now. So can you be an older person that likes doing things that young people like doing, or is that still seen as socially unacceptable?
So with each of the topics, they come under a different paper. So the topics that you study in your first year, so culture, families, education and methods, are assessed in component 1 and component 2 papers. So in component 1, you have culture, families and education. Those question types will be what we call the kind of extended writing, so 35-mark questions, for example, which are more essay-based. They will ask you to assess whether, for example, with families, if family diversity is like kind of more exaggerated, or if we have more family diversity, and to assess different reasons and explanations as to why that might be. You also get asked questions, which would also be 35-mark questions, to evaluate a certain approach to a particular topic. So the, say, feminist explanations of the family or family diversity, feminist views of education. You also have 15-mark questions in component 1 for families and education, and they're more knowledge-based. So they'll ask you to explain reasons for an increase in certain types of family, increases in more women starting to work, that kind of thing. In research methods, you have a variety of questions. So you have, say, a 20-mark question, which is asking you to explain the strengths and weaknesses of a particular method or a particular approach. They could also ask you to explain some of the issues that researchers should consider when conducting their research. And you have a 30-mark question, which is where you design research based on a topic that they give you. For crime and deviance and social stratification, for each of these, you'll have a 20-mark question, which will ask you to explain maybe certain views of something. So it could be explain whether or not crime is functional for society, if it's good for society, explain reasons why men might appear to commit more crime than women, for example. And in both of these, you'll be asked a 40-mark question, which is the same structure as a 35, which is having families and education, but you're doing a bit more analysis and evaluation. So it could be evaluate the Marxist views of stratification, for example. So thinking about why to choose sociology as a subject. So first of all, sociology allows you to explore some more contemporary issues and debates. So for example, one of the key things that we look at in education and crime and deviance is institutional racism. So it's whether or not certain institutions within society maybe have policies that affect or discriminate against some ethnic minority groups. It also goes well with a lot of subjects because we look at such a broad range of topics. It means that it does go well with subjects like psychology. So a lot of our students study both sociology and psychology because they go well together. So even though you might look at similar topics, so you look at crime, for example, in both of those subjects, the content is completely different. So in sociology, we look more at like society and how that might cause some people to go and commit crime. It goes well with health and social care. It goes well with politics, where we're looking at social policy. And it also goes well with history, where we look at like the history of education, for example. We look at reasons as to why like the position of women's changed over time, so the impact of things like feminism. Because we study such a broad range of topics, it also means that there's a variety of careers that sociology is relevant to. So it could be working in civil service, so working with the government. It could be working within the criminal justice system, so maybe working in probation, it can help with, and also places like health and social care. As I mentioned earlier, you also learn a lot of academic skills such as essay writing. So if you were looking to go to university after college, you're at an advantage by having to do quite a lot of essays. So like the 35 and 40-mark questions are building up towards writing academic essays. A little bit of extra information in terms of like trips within sociology. So our students have the opportunity to attend a crime conference, which includes meeting criminals. So it could be there's sometimes a man there who has developed a criminal career. So throughout his adult life, he was committing crimes such as burglaries and things like that. And we look at, and like he kind of goes into his background and he says like, this is how I was brought up, and he talks about like his attitudes towards things like education, and is being able to apply what we learn within the classroom to a real life situation. So that is the end of the open evening video. If you do have any questions, then please do feel free to contact myself or pass your query through the sixth form office, and they'll be able to forward it on to me and I can get back to you. So thank you for watching the sociology video, and I look forward to seeing you in September.